2.2 is upon us, and with it we will see two brand new characters in Robin and Boot Hill, with the latter leaning towards a new meta, that being break effect. However, the first character, Robin, fits perfectly on the follow-up attack team, anchored by the rerun character for part 1, Topaz. In today's video, we will go over Topaz's playstyle along with various Lightcone options and relics, and because I've been asked so many times on other various build videos, team compositions for her. So let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Topaz!
So I mentioned earlier that Topaz is the anchor for the follow-up attack team, much like how Kafka is for the dot team, but in a different manner. Topaz allows more damage to be dished out more often and become free-flowing. This can be broken down to 3 different factors: her skill, ultimate, and talent. Using the skill will apply a unique debuff to the enemy called Proof of Debt, which increases damage from follow-up attacks by 25 to 50%, and using the skill to deal damage is considered a follow-up attack. The ultimate will increase Topaz's own damage multiplier by 75 to 150% and crit damage by 12.5 to 25%. And whenever an ally uses a skill, attack, or ultimate, Nummy's action is advanced forward by 50%. Finally, the talent is where Topaz and her pet Nummy really come into the limelight. Nummy, who has a base speed of 80, and when attacking is considered a follow-up attack, and targeting enemies with the Proof of Debt debuff. Additionally, whenever an enemy with the Proof of Debt is being hit by an ally with a follow-up attack, Nummy's action is advanced forward by 50%. Going over the playstyle, you can see why I mentioned how Topaz is fundamentally the foundational piece for follow-up attack teams, while giving a boost to follow-up attacks targeted at enemies with Proof of Debt debuff. The biggest plus to Topaz is how often she allows Nummy to dish out those follow-up attack damage, and in relative ease.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Topaz!
The first Lightcone to discuss would be Topaz's signature, Worrisome Blissful. It's going to increase the crit rate by 18 to 30% and follow-up attack damage by 30 to 50%. After the wearer uses a follow-up attack, you're going to be applying the Tame State to a target, stacking up to 2 times. When allies hit enemy targets under the Tame State, every Tame stack increases crit damage by 12 to 20%. Sleep Like the Dead increases the wearer's crit damage by 30 to 50%, and when the wearer's basic attack or skill does not result in a crit hit, it's going to increase the crit rate by 36 to 60% for 1 turn. This effect can only be triggered once every 3 turns. Cruising the Stellar Sea increases the wearer's crit rate by 8 to 16% and increases their crit rate against enemies with HP less than or equal to 50% by an extra 8 to 16%. When the wearer defeats an enemy, increases their attack by 20 to 40% for 2 turns. Some 4-star options include Final Victor, increases the wearer's attack by 12 to 20%. When the wearer lands a crit hit on an enemy, gain a stack of Good Fortune, stacking up to 4 times. Every stack of Good Fortune, the wearer will increase their crit damage by 8 to 12%. Good Fortune will be removed at the end of the wearer's turn. Only Silence Remains, increases attack of its wearer by 16 to 32%. If there are 2 or fewer enemies on the field, increase the wearer's crit rate by 12 to 24%. And finally, Swordplay. For each time the wearer hits the same target, damage dealt increases by 8 to 16%, stacking up to 5 times. This effect will be dispelled when the wearer changes targets.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Topaz!
For relic sets, the options since her release have gotten a bit better, as while the Ash Blazing Grand Dude set is still probably the best in slot, allowing you to do more follow-up damage and increasing her attack stat, I believe that now, instead of a makeshift of 2 different sets as the second best option, it's now going to be Pioneer of Dead Waters, as you can fully capitalize on Topaz inflicting a debuff on the enemy, increasing overall damage by 12%, and on top of that, boosting crit rate and raising the amount of crit damage you inflict on an enemy. And whenever the Proof of Debt debuff moves to another target, you increase the crit rate and damage boost by 100% for 1 turn. The same argument can be made for the ornament sets, as an Salsado is probably the best option, increasing the crit rate and getting an additional 15% damage boost to follow-up attacks, only needing your crit rate to be above 50%. I would say that the Izumo set is fantastic. As for the best team comp, you run another hunt character, allowing Topaz to be rewarded with that additional 12% crit rate.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Topaz!
As you see with team options, Topaz is pretty one-dimensional in that she is trying to accomplish that inflicting the enemy with proof of debt and watching Nummy dish out damage, so her builds revolve around capitalizing on that damage. However, that doesn't mean her team building isn't the case, and while yes, follow-up attack units are needed, we have a large variety in the game. So starting out, her best team will involve Aventurine, Dr. Ratio, and Robin, as outside of Robin doing actual follow-up attacks, this team will be constantly throwing out follow-up attacks so much that the enemy health bar will just melt away, all the while Robin providing all the damage buff support that you're going to need. You can also run Topaz with Himiko and Herta in Pure Fiction, allowing their overall damage to greatly increase.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Topaz!
On her release, Topaz wasn't considered as one of the best characters in the game, and many people talked about how in the future she would get better. While they were right, they were right. On her rerun, Topaz has a large variety of team options, and with the introduction of Pure Fiction, while Topaz is a hunt character, she can be run with erudition units to maximize the damage output so you can get all the stars that you're going to need. Will Topaz continue to get better as time goes on? Perhaps. But if you do have follow-up attack characters, I do highly recommend that you go out and get Topaz.